Aloha, sister and brother humans. We bring you another version of the Global Hope Show. And I just found out from Noelle Rodriguez, who has been at this for quite a long time, thank you very much, that HOPE stands for Hawaii Organization for Peace and the Environment. Brilliant words and heartfelt. With peace, the environment can also be at peace. Without peace, the environment is disturbed. And that underlies much of what we talk about here, the common threads of our humanity, our care for each other, and our care for the environment on which we stand. We'll see what today's show holds. And like for people to introduce themselves, Corey, would you begin?
Corey Harden, community person.
Mike Purvis, student, grunt worker.
Jennifer Ruggles, alumni, community member.
Randall McGentry, lecturer at Hawaii Community College.
Niels Christensen, lecturer at UH Hilo and a community member.
Saul Rollison, community member and student here.
Jared Presley, student.
Bunny Smith, community member.
Sometimes we have a theme that carries us into our first discussion, and other times we sort of pull together the threads, and today is going to be such a thing. So if you've seen some of our past shows, they've had a very strong theme, and we stayed with that for the half hour. But today will be a bit more free form, and whoever wishes to bring a topic may do so. So Bunny, would you tell us about the March for Palestine?
Right. Well, the Walk for a Free and a Free Palestine will take place on October 9th. That's this Saturday at 10 o'clock at Kalakaua Park. A number of people have signed up and in addition have bought T-shirts which give the message, freedom and equality for Palestine. We will be walking silently. We will be going through the city to alert people to the situation in Palestine. And if you have access to the internet and you can look up the Hawaii Tribune Herald, you will see from yesterday's paper, which is October 6th, at page C5, there is an article describing exactly why we will be walking and what is at stake as far as the Palestinians are concerned. So we're encouraging people to come and join us, and I think it should be a very satisfying and fruitful walk, hopefully. And we hope that after that there will be other activities that we can go ahead and alert the public more to the situation in Palestine, whether it's films or other kinds of activities.
Well, since this is an open forum, and since we sometimes disagree with each other, I'm going to disagree with Bunny, although I agree with you, Bunny, on a lot of stuff. But the situation is so complex over there. I have tried to do some reading about it, and just came out going, sheesh. You know, basically I feel like if you start blaming one side or the other for this or that, I mean, that could go on forever. I feel like they need to work out some peaceful means of resolving this terrible and long-standing conflict. I mean, it's obviously just a disastrous situation for everybody, and I'd like to see it resolved. I think perhaps I'd be more in support of a march for peace in the area without saying how that should happen, but having the parties involved figure it out. That's my 2 cents on that. But
I'll say too, I went to, Colonel Ann Wright came to Kahuina Gallery, Art Gallery, and now she usually probably expects large auditoriums, being an author and a retired colonel and all this. But it was a really small kind of Hilo-sized gathering, and people that showed up to this, she was on the Mavi Marmara, which is one of the ships that went on the flotillas to the whole Gaza. And I noticed that the audience members were very polarized about, you know, the Israel-Palestine issue. Like, it seems like it's such a breaking point emotionally that a lot of the audience members seem like it's either 100% Israel's fault or it's 100%, you know, the other way around. And I noticed that, you know, they would be kind of saying, oh, even though, you know, there was violence on both sides, our guys were just defending themselves, and it seems like it almost needs to get to a little bit of a point where both people can say, yeah, there's, like, we're both at fault here. Let's try to combine. Let's not point the blame game anymore. It was really heated, and it's really interesting to see when those kind of issues become purely one-sided. It makes it really hard for conflict resolution, it seems.
I have a little different spin on this. I think that peace without justice will never stand. And I think that one of the problems is that the public in general is so poorly informed about the real issues and the real circumstances on the ground, and it's so disguised by all the rhetoric coming from both sides that it's hard to decide what really is justice there. But there's plenty of good information. You can become well informed. There's a book that just came out by Noam Chomsky called Hopes and Prospects, and he goes over the whole story from top to bottom. And when you finish that, it is clear where justice lies. And basically the Palestinians are treated as second-class citizens. They can't vote in Israel. They aren't even, they aren't treated as equal citizens, even inside of Israel as citizens. And the territories that they supposedly are trying to form a nation around have been split up and decimated, so that even if it resolves the way it is now, they won't have a viable country or a way to have an economy. So if you look at the facts, justice is very far away from where things stand today. And I think until the Palestinians will never accept this. And it's not because they hate Israel like you're told. It's not because they want to do away with Israel. It's because they do not have a viable situation the way it stands. They're treated as prisoners on their own land. They're imprisoned. They can't get supplies in and out. They can't get people in and out. Israel has them completely contained, and so they're at a very weak point to bargain. But I've been in court in cases where I deal in land law, and when the judge doesn't know the facts of where justice lies, he says, let's split it down the middle. So that's what everybody's saying now. Let's just split this thing down. Let's come to an agreement. Let's split it down the middle. But that's not justice here. And it's the only reason we'll do that is because we're poorly informed and we can accept something that's not justice.
I'm sorry.
I was going to say, I'm not sure in the history of the world that justice has ever been meted out in the kind of terms that people in Palestine would like it to be meted out. I find myself increasingly isolated in today's society, where it seems to be axiomatic that we have to have two states. There has to be a Palestinian state, there has to be an Israeli state. Am I utterly alone in believing that we actually don't need another angry Islamic state in the Middle East? I mean, I don't want a Palestine there. I'm sorry. I look at Hamas, I listen to what they say. I looked at the Palestine Party, which seemed to be a lot more moderate, a lot more rational. I look at Hamas, and it's I think, an incredibly dangerous proposition to allow them free reign in an independent Palestinian state. I don't think that it's going to do anything for the stability in the region, and I certainly don't think it's going to do anything for our security. And it's a shame to me that it just gets taken as read that it has to be this way. It has to be split down the middle. It has to be a Palestinian state. It has to be an Israeli state. They have to live in. I don't think it's going to happen. And I frankly, I don't want it to happen.
Well,
I really don't want it to happen.
I would agree with that. I would love to see a one-state solution. That was one country, but a democratic country where everybody had the same rights, where the Palestinians got to vote, they had the same rights to land, the same rights in the court, the same rights to go back and reclaim the land that's been, the houses that have been taken away from them, as they would in any just system. So that would be fine. But again, they're not offered that. The Israelis are not offering that to the Palestinians.
Well,
That's always on the table, and people can support that, but only if it's a just, equitable country where they're not discriminated against because they're Palestinians.
If I may for a moment, to bring it back to what started this is the walk on Saturday. I bought a T-shirt. I'm going to be there. In my heart and mind, where I'm coming from is lending support to the Palestinians, not against Israel. I have nothing in this walk against Israel at all. This isn't a vote against them. I don't feel polarized. In my mind, I'm having a chance to express something that I've never had a chance to express before. And Israel is facing some incredibly stark choices, politically and economically. If it includes its Arabs in its population, it will soon be overwhelmed. So Israel is facing either becoming a non-Jewish state or becoming a non-democratic state. And I agree with you. When we put things in these polar opposite terms, the politicians win, the moneymakers win. But some kind of one state, this has to be resolved at some very different level than from the military and some imposed sanctions by a superpower. Because Israel is facing such a stark choice in its own existence. So wherever it looks, it's faced with existential threats, either from Iran or from Hamas or from its own internal dynamics of highly orthodox, highly conservative aspect that is not willing to give Arabs any rights in their state. And without that, they're not going to be a democratic state anymore. So it is very complicated and great forum to talk about it where we like each other and we're willing to listen to each other.
I have
The
seen
focus
this.
of the walk is simply equality and freedom for Palestine. That is it. Nobody against anybody, just simply freedom and equality for Palestine. And I'd like people to think, should we say to the blacks in South Africa, you go back under apartheid? Is anybody going to say that? No. Well, it's very interesting that Archbishop Tutu of South Africa, who lived through the horrors of all of the apartheid, says the situation that the Palestinians are dealing with is far worse than what was going on in South Africa. Should we say to American blacks, sorry, we're cutting back on this, no more civil rights, no more. You go back and you just be second-class citizens. And Jim Crow is going to be started again. Is anybody interested in that?
Well, I mean, that's
Oh, you are.
a fine analogy, except I don't think it holds water. I mean, Desmond Tutu and Nelson Mandela didn't say, if you bring us to power, we're going to have a theocracy and we're going to wipe Israel off the whites off the face of the earth. I mean, they didn't do that. But what they offered was compromise, forgiveness, and the ability to sit down and live together. I don't think Hamas wants that. I don't think any reading of anything Hamas puts out, except in its most kind of vapid PR crap that it gives to the UN, you can read anything other than violence, aggression, retribution, hatred, fundamental Islamic beliefs, and underlying violence.
What
But
is
that's
that?
just Hamas.
But Hamas was the Palestinians elected Hamas. So what are we to expect?
Why
What are we
does
to
Hamas
expect
do
from a Palestinian state?
Okay, why does Hamas take in that point of view?
Why? They've taken a point of view, presumably, because it's something they thrive on.
Wait,
I mean-
could it be possibly injustice?
Nelson Mandela was in jail for 25 years. He suffered unbelievable injustices, as did the blacks in South Africa, if we want to continue your analogy, Bunny, and yet they didn't all rise up. They didn't suggest rising up. It was never part of their official policy to rise up and crush the whites. But that's exactly what Hamas is doing. It's exactly what Hamas wants. And there are people like me in the West who are frankly scared of that.
But they're not the only ones that are using violence to try to win the day. If you look at the body count on the two sides, it's probably hundreds or thousands to one of Palestinians that have died in this conflict as opposed to Israelis. So, yeah, we see that side, we see the bombs going off, we see that, because we're aligned with them. But the other side, the Arab world, sees all of the chaos and havoc and deaths and children dying by the tens of thousands on the Palestinian side. So this has all been staged. Our country is involved with one side more heavily than the other side. Okay? So, but the point is how to de-escalate this back down so it's not a matter of winning the day by violence and by power. It's got to be by justice. And you have to, at the end of the day, have confidence, either that humanity has a collective interest and peaceful resolutions. And if I hear the Palestinians on the street, and if I hear the Israelis on the street, I hear the same thing. There's a common humanity that wants to find a peaceful way to live together. But there's also the powers to be who stimulate this for their own ends. And somehow we have to bring this from the bottom up again as a people, trying to get that level of humanity to succeed. I think that's what the walk is about.
And
It's
Saul,
the people.
by your own example, which I very much commend, but Nelson Mandela is one of the rarest kinds of human beings. To live under those conditions without bitterness and to overcome and to forgive, I wish for that part of the world to have a leader like that. I have yet to see it. And if we could talk tactics, I think in this positive support of Palestine, and this may sound mean, but we can stick it to the Arab world. They have had this stalking horse free of charge for years. They don't do anything to help the Palestinians themselves. And by giving some kind of support, and it's difficult to do in a world that just wants black or white to come through the middle somehow. But if we could support Palestine and the part of the Palestinian representative government that makes some sense and isn't just hell-bent on Israel's destruction, we will push it back into the Arab world. It's like, we're doing it, you didn't do it, you had 50 years to work on this. Clearly, a lot of the Arab leaders just want this as a useful tool to poke us in the eye whenever they can. They're not giving any money or support. They let the Palestinians languish, right?
I agree. I mean, I totally agree. I don't see very many invitations for the Palestinians to move into Syria, or Lebanon, and why not? I mean, if there is this solidarity amongst Arabs, then why isn't there more of that? And the fact that there is, because you're absolutely right. It's a poking stick, and it's a focal point, and it's much easier to coalesce people around a common enemy. And if that common enemy is Israel, then so be it.
But you do understand that Jordan at this point is more than, 50% Palestinian. So it's not entirely true that the Arab countries have been negligent in this. Jordan has certainly done this. I think another issue that we have not discussed in terms of balance is what is the United States giving to the Palestinians to help them move forward? And what are we providing to the Israelis every single year at a time when we're cutting educational funds, we're cutting this, that, and the other, and so forth for our own people, $3 billion a year.
Right, but at least it's relatively transparent. I mean,
Yes, it is.
What would happen to $3 billion that was written out in a check and given to Hamas? I mean,
How do you know that?
I don't, but the point is,
Well,
do you want
you
to
don't.
run the risk?
No, excuse me, could we talk facts maybe?
Go
The
for it.
$3 billion that we give to Israel every year, that's fact.
Mhm.
We don't know these other suppositions, partly because frankly, there is a lot of anti-Arab feeling, and I feel there's a lot of racism going on vis-a-vis the Arabs, just as we're seeing in our own country, the rise of racism with the attitudes towards Obama. So I think we need to look at this. I see that this is a financial issue. I don't want my money going $3 billion. I don't have $3 billion. But what I'm saying is I don't want my funds going for that purpose. That's
To take
what
a
I said.
different tack, I've seen the opinion that when there's less demand for oil from that region, when we get into alternative energy and the oil doesn't make that region so important anymore, a lot of this may just go away. That seems to be the big picture driving it.
Well, I think
Then we'll go have
you
wars
can take, I think
over.
you can take the may out of that statement. I think you can take the may out of that statement. I think it will absolutely go away.
Yeah. Then we'll start having wars over resources for solar cells and Lord knows what. I mean, that's how
Rare
things go. You fight, if it's water, you fight over water. It's always who's going to get the resources. So I wonder if Jennifer and Jared have any thoughts, because we've been going so fast here. Do you folks have any thoughts?
Well, I have seen that movie, Witness in Palestine, twice, and it's basically a documentary about a woman of Arab descent that was born in America that moved to Palestine with a video camera just to see what was really going on, because she couldn't trust the media. And it's really interesting because at one point she brings up a Time magazine that was printed in the UK, and on the front cover, in the corner, it has some stuff about Palestine and Israel. But then when she shows the U.S. Time magazine, it has a sports thing there instead. So I thought that was kind of interesting. I feel like the best way to find information out about this Palestinian and Israeli conflict is through independent documentaries and media.
Jennifer, can I mention? Anna Baltzer is not Arab. She's an American Jewish woman. The heads of almost all the organizations in the United States that are supporting justice for Palestine are American Jews. Jewish Voice for Peace is particularly active. And I remember being in a demonstration in Washington about 4 or 5 years ago. About 10,000 people were there. About half of them had green signs on their back saying, "Another American Jew against the occupation of Palestine." What I'm hearing from many American Jews is simply that Judaism is being killed by what's going on by the Israelis. And they put it this way, by the Zionists. In other words, it's focus simply on we will get our way no matter how many Palestinians. And they are so opposed to this attitude that the only good Palestinian is a dead Palestinian. They've had enough of that. And that is a very prevalent attitude among Zionists.
And there's a few things that I remember, highlights from that documentary that I saw, was she was interviewing families and she was taking videos of Palestinian families whose houses had been just bulldozed, even while family members were in them, and walls built up, blocking them from their olive orchards, and just really like injustices, just injustices.
We have about 2 minutes left. Jared, any comment?
I support the conflict. I support it. I don't think it should end. I think, I don't care who makes the laws. Give me control of the money.
Okay, that's the golden
So,
rule, right? Who
I
has
would
the
say,
gold rules?
I look at the conflict, that's a great place to capitalize.
Are you an American?
That would be a pure American. I believe in capitalizing on, a situation that's asking for it. I mean, it's totally, that's like a deer in the woods just waiting to get shot. It's totally fresh meat. That's money right there. That's money that companies could make a lot of money off of.
They are.
And that's great.
Well, they are.
That's great.
I'd like to just say that if you want a balanced news source about many of these subjects, but especially about the Middle East, Al Jazeera, English version online, is one of the best sources of information I have. You can watch CNN all day and you get nothing. Al Jazeera has some very
Can you spell it?
concise.
Can you,
A-L, I don't know, can you spell it?
Jazeera.
okay,
It's a fantastic, balanced news source.
thank you.
And just while we're at it, I'd like to give us some kudos here for being open to very different points of view, and the fact that this is not a corporate or profit-making effort shows up in one of my favorite satirists, Jon Stewart, said he doesn't expect much from politicians. He's not disheartened by what politicians do. When you go to the zoo and the monkeys throw their feces, that's what monkeys do. But the zookeeper, the media, is supposed to at least once in a while go, "Bad monkey." And that's just what we're not getting.
That's wonderful, thank you.
Good monkey. Thank you. See you next time.
All right. Okay.